to the entertaining Talkin' Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, I'm going to jump into two major topics that came out today regarding the New York Giants. One from the new head coach, Robert Saleh, of the New York Jets. The other, it's kind of been spiraling, out of control on Twitter. A lot of people have been asking me to make a video on Dan Orlovsky and what he had to say about the New York Giants and how he thinks they should be much more aggressive in their pursuit of Deshaun Watson, of course, the quarterback that is newly on the trade market that a lot of people think will garner a lot of interest from around the league. And I'll give my full opinion on that in this video and what Dan Orlovsky had to say. In addition to that, I just want to let everybody know I will be live tomorrow night. I try to do that once a week. Obviously, it's a bye week. There's no Super Bowl. I'll go live. We'll talk about the Giants. We'll talk about the Super Bowl. We'll talk about the Senior Bowl, which is tomorrow as well. And I didn't really make a video on the standouts in the practices, but I'll rattle off a couple of names that have supposedly stood out. Kadarius Toney, the wide receiver. Nico Collins, another good wide receiver prospect. Mac Jones, of course, the quarterback, and hopefully he's moving up draft charts, which would help the New York Giants. Hunter Long, I think his name is pronounced Quinn Meniers. He's an offensive line prospect. Josh Palmer, Creed Humphreys, the well-known center prospect out of Oklahoma, who could be a second-round target for the New York Giants, were some of the names that stood out over the three-day practice session well at the Senior Bowl. And we'll see how they all perform tomorrow. I'm sure there'll be news that comes out with that. And I'll have a video coming up probably about that, and we'll recap it in the live stream tomorrow night. But in this video, like I said, we're going to jump into those two topics. Robert Saleh came out today, and or maybe it was yesterday, but it came out early this morning, and voiced his opinion about the comparison between New York Giants and New York Jets fans. And, I'll pull up all the quotes, and in the end, I'll give you guys my opinion about whether or not I think it's disrespectful, or whether or not I think he's just trying to get the fan base riled up. But we'll jump into that, and in addition to that, we're also going to jump into the topic at hand that a lot of you guys asked me to do a video on about Dan Orlovsky and some of the things that he had to say regarding Deshaun Watson. Orlovsky came out and basically said that if he were the New York Giants, I'm going to pull up the exact quote, he would give up 3 future first-round picks, including this year's, the 11th overall selection, Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones. Barkley, of course, being the second overall pick 3 years ago, and Daniel Jones, who, of course, is the quarterback right now for the New York Giants, who you would inevitably trade, whether it be to Houston or whether it be to somebody else, if you were to bring in Deshaun Watson. And I'll talk about whether or not I think that's fair value and whether or not I would entertain it if I were the New York Giants. And I'll be as fair as I can breaking this down. I see both sides of it. But first, let's jump into all the quotes. First, we're going to pull up what Dan Orlovsky had to say about the New York Giants, and here it is. If I was Dave Gettleman of the New York Giants, I would take Daniel Jones, I would take Saquon Barkley, and I would take 3 first-round picks, and I would call Houston. Now, the first thing I'm going to say about this is supposedly 2/3 of the league has already been in contact with Houston, and it is going to be a bidding war. So before I even give my full opinion after I pull up all the quotes, I don't even think that this deal would probably get it done. That's how much I think he's going to demand. And you look at teams, like I've said, like the Jets and Miami, they are picking higher in the draft. But we'll jump back more into that in a second. Next thing we're going to pull up are some of the quotes about what Robert Saleh had to say about the New York Giants fans. The Jet fan base is so passionate, Saleh said during a spot on the Huddle and Flow podcast. So I went to Michigan State, got my master's degree from there, have a strong connection in Michigan State. Go green, right? And when you look at the Michigan State fan base versus the Michigan fan base, it's very similar to what you see in New York, if you think about it. Michigan's more, we always make fun of Michigan for being more of the uppity-ups. Sit on your hands, where the Spartan fans are a little bit more rambunctious, a little bit more passionate, a little bit more, they're louder. Like we always say, a loaded stadium in East Lansing is a hell of a lot louder than a loaded stadium in the Big House in Ann Arbor. Then he further went on to say this. When you get here, you just feel that. When we've played the Jets in the past versus the Giants, no disrespect to them, they're absolutely a phenomenal franchise. But the Jet fan base feels more invested, I should say. They feel more invested in the way they are so passionate about their team, Saleh said. All right, well, the first thing I'm going to say is this. I cannot blame Robert Saleh for coming out and saying these things. He's the new head coach for the New York Jets. He's trying to get the fan base behind him. I get it, okay? But here's the first thing I'm going to say. Listen, I've been on YouTube now for over 2 years. The New York Giants have been atrocious over that time span, and Giants fans are as passionate as anybody. I'm sorry, and maybe people could say at the games they're not as loud. I don't know. I don't go to Jet games. But here's what I'll say. there is not a more passionate fan base on YouTube than New York Giants fans. People continue to support me. They continue to support Bad Dog. They continue to support New York Giants video makers because they are so passionate about this franchise, even though this franchise has given us very little to be happy about since our last Super Bowl in 2012. And I get the whole big brother, little brother thing. Listen, I'm a Mets fan, okay? You can't get more of a little brother than the Mets in comparison to the Yankees. The Jets are kind of the little brother of the New York Giants. I get that. But at the end of the day, he's wrong. I mean, Giants fans are just every bit as passionate as New York Jets fans. Do I get that? I get what he's trying to do. And we saw what Rex Ryan tried to do as well. Now, one thing I will say, Rex Ryan took it a step further. Rex Ryan went on to say, basically, I'm paraphrasing a bit, that the Jets were going to take over New York, that they were the number one dog in town, and then, of course, the New York Giants shut them up with the 99-yard touchdown catch from Victor Cruz, and then eventually resulting in a Super Bowl win. Also, he took it a step too far during the Snoopy Bowl, in which the New York Jets and New York Giants played. He kept Mark Sanchez in there way too long, ended up injuring his, what he hoped would be his franchise quarterback. I believe he also had his wife get a tattoo of Mark Sanchez. Do I think Saleh will take it that far? No, I think he's just trying to get the fan base behind him. I don't really get too upset about the comments that he came out here. What is he supposed to say? But what I will say, if he was the New York Giants head coach, in my opinion, he wouldn't even bring up the New York Jets. Okay, the Jets at the end of the day are still our little brother. And at the end of the day, the score is still Giants 4, Jets 1. And Jets fans will continue to be, not all, I'm not trying to say all Jets fans, but jealous. Just like Mets fans are jealous of the New York Yankees. But I get what he's trying to do. I don't think he did anything that out of line with those quotes. As far as what Dan Orlovsky had to say, and like I said, I'm going to try to evaluate this as fairly as I can. I completely understand both sides of the argument. We'll start with the people that would absolutely do everything in their power to go out there and bring in Deshaun Watson. We'll start with that group of people. Those people obviously strongly feel that Daniel Jones can't get the job done. Let's start there, right? It's why they'd be willing to give away all that draft capital. I say it all the time. The biggest advantage in the NFL is to have a quarterback on a rookie deal, right? Before he chews up 20% of the cap space, which is exactly what Deshaun Watson would do if we were to acquire him. Yes, I fully understand that this year he only eats up $15 million. The following years, though, I think it's 40, 42, and it might be like 35 in the final year of his contract. So if you were to make this trade, not only would you be giving away future draft capital in 2021, 2022, 2023 for a team that is far and away from being a Super Bowl established franchise, much like the Houston Texans, the team where he's coming from, where he won 4 games. Not only would you be giving away that draft capital, not have first-round draft picks, where generally is where you're going to hit on high-impact players for your franchise, you'd also be tying up 20% of your cap space for 2022, 2023, 2024, and not even have the advantage of having a quarterback on a rookie salary. So those are the disadvantages to this move. In addition to that, you'd also be giving away our best player, Saquon Barkley. At least on the offense, he's got to stay healthy, but the guy we all know is dynamic when he's out there, and without him in the lineup, you saw the effect that it had on the offense this year. We were 31st in the league. Daniel Jones, I bring up the stats all the time, is a much different quarterback with Barkley in there than out. Okay, so you'd be giving all that up to bring in Deshaun Watson, a quarterback who is great. Don't get me wrong, he threw for almost 5,000 yards this year, but what did the stats mean? If Daniel Jones put up those stats and the Giants went 4-12, people would be upset about it. And I'm not saying the rest of our roster is not better than Houston's. It probably is. But if you were to do this, you'd be sacrificing players on that defense. Maybe you could still keep Leonard Williams, but you have to be forward-thinking. If $40 million is going to go against the cap towards your quarterback in the next year, you're probably not going to be able to retain Peppers, things like that. It would hurt the rest of your roster. And the New York Giants, where they're at now, for all the fans that want to move on from Daniel Jones and make this move and do everything they can, well, if you're right, and Daniel Jones is not the guy, which is very possible. I'm not telling you I'm sold on Daniel Jones yet. I've said that I want to see him get a better supporting cast, and we'll see what we got going forward. But he's nowhere close to Deshaun Watson. I get that. Deshaun Watson is one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks under the age of 25 or younger in the NFL. Might even be the second best behind Pat Mahomes. I completely understand that, okay? And I understand when you have the ability to go out there and bring in a guy like that, you do what you can. 2, I don't even think that price would be enough, because I look around the league. The Chicago Bears have already said they're desperate to bring in a quarterback, everything else. I think you'd have to give up more than that. But the way I look at it is this: if you are right and Daniel Jones is not the guy, well, then the Giants are probably going to finish with a top 5, 6, 7 pick in next year's draft. And that is when you go out there and you draft his replacement and you hope that he is the next Deshaun Watson, but you pay him 20 cents on the dollar and you'd have more cap space, and you'd be able to retain your 2 future first-round picks. So that's the way I look at it. If you're right, we're going to be drafting a quarterback in 2022 anyway. We keep Barkley, we keep our future draft assets, and we keep our cap space. So you can fill out this roster better. Not to mention, it would give you the freedom to go out there this year and draft a wide receiver to help that future quarterback. To me, you stay the course if you're the New York Giants. You don't go out there, you trade away all this future draft capital to bring in a guy who is great, but when he gets here, he's not going to have much of a team to support him, and he's going to have no future draft capital to go out there and support the rest of the franchise with very little cap space. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, if the Giants were in a completely different situation, if they were the Indianapolis Colts, if they were the San Francisco 49ers, if they were built to win right now and could afford to give away, years of draft capital to do it, I would say, yeah, go for it. You bring in Deshaun Watson. And I get that he's 25 years old, but there's no guarantees past after this contract in 3 years or 4 years, whenever it expires, that he'll be here. And the question you have to ask yourself, if you're willing to make that kind of trade, the end game here is to win Super Bowls. And you have to ask yourself, does that give you a better opportunity to win a Super Bowl? Is that going to put you over the top, or is it going to put you in mediocre land? And when you don't have first-round picks, it's very hard to continue to build a football team. I would stay the course. And if Jones isn't the guy, that's when you move on in 2022 via the draft. You tell me one team in the history of the NFL, and maybe you can, that has given up 3 future first-round picks and their best player on offense, and it has resulted in a Super Bowl, a team that had 6 wins the year before. Teams that have done this in the past have had a good team around the said quarterback they were bringing in. When Peyton Manning went to Denver, it was an older quarterback, but he went to an established franchise. I don't see it here with Deshaun Watson. I really don't, especially because there's no guarantees past 3 or 4 years. You stay the course. You continue to build through the draft. You win through the draft. It's about stability. It's not about a quick fix. That's what my mindset has always been. Whether or not Daniel Jones will be that quarterback, I can't tell you that yet. I need to see how he performs in 2021. But if he's not the answer, you draft your next quarterback. As always, guys, if you like what you watch, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.